there. I'm the most.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your garden supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, you know, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't.
All right, something echoey is happening with that.
Yeah, somebody's got their speakers turned up or something. I'm not sure what's going on.
Something's happening. So.
Probably Joel.
I'm using the wired headset like a millennial.
Yeah.
So
All right. Okay. Well. So
all right.
far,
Well,
so good.
with that out of the way, welcome to another edition of The Week That Was. I am Nancy Derringer, sitting in for the peripatetic, intrepid, globetrotting Saeed Khan, who cannot be with us because he's somewhere in an airplane high above the sky. I am going to be his imperfect substitute. And before we go any further, let's introduce you to the panel today, which is, as usual, fabulous. We have the legal troika of Joel Sklar, Steve Fishman, and Bill Seikaly, because apparently they've just been signed to some sort of long-term contract here, and we
Money's great.
appreciate them
Really
showing
is.
up. Yeah. We also, to my left or your right,
Bill
whatever,
is
we also
muted. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I knew you guys were paying Fishman and you weren't paying me. I just wanted to
we also
kick
have
the
community.
Palestinian while he's down. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kick the Palestinian while he's down. We also have community and labor activist Barb Ingalls, and coming in for a quick fly through is Beverly Watts, president of BME Consulting and the former director of the Wayne County Public Services Department. And of course, down there in the position of Atlas, holding us all, balancing us all on the top of his still hairy head, is Deadline Detroit co-founder Allan Lengel, and the guy who puts this show together every week. So, by the way, I'm Nancy Derringer, and I'm supposed to be called a
Veteran journalist.
but I think it's safe right now to say I am persona non grata in many parts of Grosse Pointe, but that's okay.
It's an honor.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's an honor I wear proudly. So anyway, let's get to the week that was. Once again, it was action-packed, unfortunately blood-soaked week. And I suppose we should move to topic number one on the global scene, which is the ongoing war in Israel and Gaza, between the nation of Israel and Hamas.
Let's play
do you
this.
have something?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's play this video and that'll kind of...
The point is there are strong opinions everywhere, and in some cases, they've undeniably been informed by bigotry. Anti-Semitic and Islamophobic incidents, including violent assaults, have spiked in the US in the past month. To put it mildly, it's not been an easy time to wear a yarmulke or a hijab in America over the last month. And I say that knowing it's not necessarily been easy on our best days. So there are 1,000 different reasons why this is hard to talk about, but it does feel important to at least try.
That's our anthem here. It is important to at least try. So let's start with probably the big news this week, which was the clearing or the seizure of the hospital in Gaza. I can't think of the name of it. Al-Shifri?
Sharif, I thought.
Am
I wrong?
And on the political scene in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu is getting a pushback from the Israeli opposition leader, whose name I'm going to dig up here real fast.
Yair Lapid.
Thank you, Mr. Brainiac. Take it away, guys. I mean, how do we all feel about this? Who wants to go first? Okay, Fish.
Well, it's just as impossible this week as it was last week, as it was the week before. The situation is something that was created by Bibi Netanyahu. It's more than past time for him to be gone. I don't know how much reading you guys have been doing over the week, but he's already thinking about preserving himself. He's not even thinking about how you solve this crisis. He's only thinking in terms of, I got to keep me in power before I have to go back to court and get convicted and go to prison. And I just think that the rest of it, I mean, the Israelis are desperately trying to say, obviously, that there were arms and tunnels, et cetera, underneath the hospital, because you've got to be able to explain why so many young people, including children, little ones, have been killed. And it's just an impossible situation. It's been the same. How long ago? October 7th was the date, and my son got married the same day. And it was a conversation piece, unfortunately, at the wedding, and it hasn't changed until now. I don't think anybody can say how it's going to end, and I don't think anybody can really say for sure what it is that's going through people's heads, other than to say, I'm convinced, and my Israeli sister is convinced, that what's going through Bibi's head is trying to preserve his own ass, like it always is. And that's basically my summary.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Bill.
No, go ahead,
How
Allan.
often do you talk about to your sister in Israel?
My Israeli sister is here. She happened to have been here for the wedding, and she's not gone back. And it's up to her to decide what she's going to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if she winds up moving back here. One daughter is here. It's a long story, but there are going to be plenty. There had been before all of this. I'm sure you guys know that a lot of the techies had been leaving. A lot of people have been leaving. Once Netanyahu and his right-wing cronies started doing what they were doing, they want to turn it into a religious state. And there's just a whole hell of a lot of secular people in Israel. And when I say secular, it doesn't mean we're not observant. I mean, we're observant Jews, but we're not Orthodox and we're not ultras. And my nieces both served in the army. My brother-in-law was a paratrooper in 2 wars. So it's very difficult for people like that to listen to what they have to listen to from these far right-wing people and the ultras, the Haredim, we call it in Hebrew. And I think that they're going to see a lot of people leaving and going elsewhere, because if you're going to live in a religious state and you're a secular person, you're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about, I mean, Lapid is asking for the removal of Netanyahu now. They want special elections now, which is hard during a war, but it wouldn't be horrible. I mean, Netanyahu's looking at it like, hey, this happened on my watch. I don't want to walk away. And I can understand that part. But as Steve said, he's also looking for political survival. And he's still got these maniac people in the cabinet who are trying to, fight the idea of sending in fuel, of sending in food and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you can't do that. I mean, it's so fucked up as it is. And as
on
Steve
contrary,
says,
Allan, they're doing it. They're doing it.
Well,
you can't say they can't do it. They are doing it.
Right. Well, there's a fight going on there, but they need to remove the cabinet, and then they need to figure out what's the end game here. I mean, if you talk to Israelis, and I've talked to my cousins, and they're like, one of my cousins says, we don't have anything against the Palestinians, but we can't live with Hamas anymore. And Netanyahu is to blame for a lot of the political situation here, but so is Hamas. I mean, it was a symbiotic, sick relationship that they both had. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that first of all, let me say that I completely agree with everything Steve said. I want to provide the mirror image. The problem is that Netanyahu and the leaders of Hamas don't want peace. But
right.
It's in their own best interest. It doesn't do any good, by the way, Allan, to say we don't support Netanyahu, but we can't live with Hamas anymore, because Hamas gets to use that same rhetoric about we don't mind the Jews, the secular Jews, but we can't live with them what they're constantly doing in the West Bank. Look,
no, they also don't want Israel. Period.
That's it. But
that's just simply not true, Allan. Not every Palestinian doesn't want
Hamas,
Israel.
Hamas.
No.
We're talking Hamas.
Look, okay, but Netanyahu and the crazies on the right want to eliminate the Palestinians. They want to take over the West Bank. They want to take over Gaza. They want to take those territories back as part of Israel. So you can't say, oh, the bad guys are only Hamas. The fact of the matter is, we have a problem with bad guys on both sides. And nobody wants peace. And it's not, it's simply too intellectually dishonest to say we can't live with that side anymore. Steve, I want you to get in, but I want to say something that I'd said in some prior shows when you weren't here. This does appear to the rest of the world to be an intractable situation. So what do? It is not, in my opinion, much different than what happens when you have two buddies fighting in the schoolyard when we were kids, or any other situation like this. If this is going to stop, and I think that the real question is, what is the end game? Netanyahu's been very clear the last couple of weeks. The end game is to take over the West Bank and to stay in there for the foreseeable future. He couldn't be any clearer. Even the American government says that's not acceptable. It is not acceptable, and that's a wise position, because if you think Hamas is bad, the entities that will develop as a result of an occupation of the West Bank will make Hamas look like good guys.
But Bill,
that's unacceptable.
But we've had. I mean, we talk about you're under the assumption that Netanyahu is going to stay in office. That look, if you watch for the last 9 months prior to this whole thing, Israelis did not want. There were protests for 9 months, and not just a few people, hundreds of thousands of people in the streets constantly saying they don't want Netanyahu. So it's the same thing with Hamas. Hamas says Hamas doesn't want, they don't want peace. They want the whole Arab world to be outraged and join in and help in the fight against Israel. So it's
actually, that's not quite true. Here's the problem with Hamas. The Hamas problem is not the Palestinian problem. The problem with Hamas is, just like Steve said about the right wing in Israel, the problem with Hamas is it's an Islamic organization. It is not a nationalist organization.
Islamist. Yeah.
Islamist.
Yes. Yeah.
An Islamist organization. It's not a Palestinian organization.
So here's the thing, and Bill and I have been agreeing on this from the beginning of discussing this. You have to go back to Oslo. You have to go back to Yitzhak Rabin and Arafat. And what both sides need, and it's clear as a bell, and whether we can get there, that's a different question. What both sides need is the Israelis need to recognize the fact that there has to be a Palestinian state. That's all there is to it. And the Palestinians have to recognize that Israel is not going away. So when we talk about Hamas, I mean, everybody talks about it as if it's it's not a political organization. As Bill said, they want to eliminate Israel and they want to murder every Jew there is. So fine, that's the way they are. That's not who you're going to do business with. You can't do business on the other side with Netanyahu and his cronies, because they're not interested in recognizing the fact that there's going to have to be a two-state solution. So what we need, and whether it can happen or not, who knows? You listen to Thomas Friedman and Brett Stevens and all these people who are there, including the Israeli journalists and including the Arabic journalists. Whether we can find those people, we don't know. But the end of it all, the only end game that works is when we have Israelis like Rabin, who recognize the fact that we have to do something about a two-state solution, and we have to have people on the other side who recognize the state of Israel is there and it's not going away. And all the rest of it, to me, is just conversation. And that's
yeah. And look, I not only do I agree, but I think that, Allan, you said it's not like Netanyahu's going to be there forever. It doesn't matter. Believe me, the destruction that's going on in Gaza is creating scars that are not going to go away. Right. I don't care who's in power. So what we need to do, but
also, Bill, for both sides. I'm sorry, but the scars on the other side are there as well, and it's scars on both sides. Right.
Yeah, except but again, I don't disagree that there are scars on both sides. Look, you've never heard me defend what Hamas did, never. But the problem is that there's a question of proportionality here, Allan. The city of Gaza virtually doesn't exist anymore. There have been millions of people completely displaced. 10,000 innocent civilians have been killed. It's become disproportionate. Still, I want to make the point.
Go ahead.
We need to figure out what the end game is. What's the end game? If the end game is to stop this killing and to stop the hemorrhaging, the United States needs to go into Israel and say, stop. We are going to provide troops to make sure that the Hamas nor anybody else is going to come in and bother you. We need to get our Arab partners, to the extent that we have any, to go into the West Bank and take that over. And then you need to create fundamentally a Marshall Plan to rebuild Gaza and to bring the Palestinians back. Because what I'm seeing right now is exactly what happened in 1948 and 1967. You know, these reasonable Arabs that the Israelis would like to deal with, they're leaving. Steve's family, the reasonable Israelis, are leaving. We're going to have madmen, mad women on both sides in control if the rest of the world doesn't step in and do something about this.
I have
And it has to be an international coalition. It can't just be.
I agree.
It has to be. It has to be.
Arabic nations
It's
have
like,
to-
if you guys want to keep this up, you're going to have to go. You know, you're going up against the whole world. But
Right, united front.
But also
And-
the Arab nations being invested in peace of that area, and I'm not sure the Arab Street or the Arab governments are. The Palestinian issue is an awful issue. It's no question about it, but it's also been a distraction for many of the leaders in the Middle East to have their populist vent. So I'm not sure that the Arab nations have an interest in helping the Palestinians, and they have to help.
They never have. Look at
I'm just saying there has to be-
Assad killed more Palestinians than the Israeli government has.
Right. And until we get, the Arab nations, European, until we get some sort of coalition for peace that includes the Arab nations, it ain't going to happen.
But Joel, the Arab nations are not a uniform. I mean, we talk about Jews and we talk about Arabs like they're monolithic. They're not.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that you need the cooperation of the leadership in the entire region to create a form of peace.
You're never going to get Syria, for example. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's a rogue nation. But that doesn't mean that you can't get a significant group of Arab nations.
I think Jordan will
And the Palestinians have been used as pawns on both sides.
Right.
That's why, if this is going to work, it's got to be about Palestinian self-determination.
I have a question, Bill. I totally agree with all. I love the idea if they could get peace forces in there and buffer zones and all that, and end all this now. What did the Israelis do about the hostages?
Well, that's got to be part of that. That's not complicated. That's got to be part of the deal.
yeah,
It's got to be part of the deal that the hostages get released, and peacekeepers come in and do this.
and Hamas has offered
But it
a
also
hostage
has to be
swap.
involved with the Palestinian.
The question is,
Palestinians that are in prison in Israel have got to be released. That's all part of that deal, and it's not all that complicated.
well,
I don't want to spend the whole
I hope
show.
you're right. I hope you're right.
I don't want to spend the entire show on this, but I just want to say one thing, because it tends to be dominated by these highly informed dudes here, the lawyers. But I just want to say that the longer this goes on, the more the Israelis are losing support from particularly young people. I mean, it's like there's all this talk about rising anti-Semitism. That's true, but a lot of it is just young people who are just, horrified by this, like you said, not just rooting out Hamas, but the utter destruction of Gaza. So, and we can talk about that for another hour too. But I just,
Right,
by the way,
TikTok is
just
winning,
because
right?
yeah, TikTok. I like that, Beverly. Thank you. Can I point out something that
Sure.
that I think a lot of people forget? The Jews and the Arabs are both Semitic.
Yeah, well, I know, but that's what Farrakhan says when he's accused of anti-Semitism. He's like, "Oh, some of my best friends are Semites. I can't possibly be," and then he always brings up. But you're right, they are.
He's an anti-Semite.
He's definitely he's anti-Jew.
really
We can, but that's not. Let's not skate off on that tangent. All right, we have handled the in profoundly depressing, seemingly intractable conflict in the Middle East. Let's move on to the one in Congress that ensued this week between the Teamster, the Teamster and the Tennessee Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, and Mr. Lengel has some video for this.
Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on. Oh, stop it.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Hold it. If we can, no, I have the mic. I'm sorry.
Bernie Sanders is as good as them. Wait a minute, wait, you're a senator. Wait a minute, what are you doing?
If Bernie Sanders had somehow gotten into that fight, I would be betting on Bernie Sanders because I just really feel like he is the true man in that particular.
The best part I can't wait until the SNL skit this coming weekend. I cannot wait.
Good point, Beverly.
But Bernie yelled, and you cut off before that. Bernie goes, "You are standing in front of the United States Congress." He was so outraged that was happening. It was just awesome.
Right. I mean, he said, "You are a United States senator. Sit down. Act like it." Isn't that what he said? Act like
yes.
it.
So, yeah. It was perfect.
This is not the House of Representatives. It's the
Senate. I looked it up. I was dying of curiosity about whether there'd ever been a fist fight in the Senate.
Yes.
Too bad.
The caning, the famous caning before the Civil War, right?
Well, too bad Saeed's not here because the fact of the matter is that over in England they must be sophisticated to do that all the time. But the last fist fight was in 1902 between a South Carolina junior senator and a senior senator. The state I don't have. As a result of Ben Tillman, after being accused of telling a willful, malicious, and deliberate lies, they had a fist fight on the floor of the Senate. And the provision to Rule 19 was changed to read, "No senator in a debate shall directly or indirectly, by any form or words, impute to another senator or other senators any conduct or motive unworthy or unbecoming a senator." The exact words that Bernie used.
When you're
unbecoming.
Go ahead.
I think we're seeing states like Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, which attempted where we don't need football players and wrestlers in there. We've got Tommy Tuberville, in there, who's a disaster as a senator. We've got this guy, this clown, who I guess was a wrestler. I mean,
Mark
Minnesota
Wayne.
did have Jesse Ventura for a brief time, but I mean, we don't need these
he wasn't
clowns.
that bad.
Yeah, he wasn't that bad. I mean, but these guys are clowns. I mean, for that guy to stand up, it's like, you got to be kidding me.
Well,
you have to at least you have to excuse basketball players because Bill Bradley was a pretty good senator. So
yeah, I agree.
Keep talking about can I just ask? I'm interested in what Barbara and Beverly say. Where do you see this kind of behavior resulting from some of the conduct we hear from Trump in particular, the Republicans in general? Do you think this is somehow connected to that?
I do think it's been building up, and I think this is part of it. And then they wonder why our young people are not engaged in the political process and don't want to wash their hands of it, and they're going to TikTok and social media for information. Because you're looking at this, you're looking at it, and you're like, okay, this is seriously a SNL skit. You're having an elected official who's supposed to be there to help their district. Important issues are facing: hunger, healthcare, all of those things. And here they are, as up there on the playground, and you're challenging someone a UAW union person or anyone to a brawl. And they think this is a good look. And someone elected him. And so I'm more concerned with him, but also the rhetoric and the mindset of the people who would elect someone in that office and probably will continue to elect someone in that office. So to your point or your question, Steve, yes, I think this has been the pattern since we've had Trump, who's been president, that rhetoric, and they're feeling more engaged and more empowered to have such actions like this. We can laugh and it was kind of shocking, but this is very, very sad, along with a lot of other sad things that's been happening to our country and around the world.
Yeah.
Part of the masculinity, there's this hyper masculinity of the Republicans, to be manly, to be extremely masculine. And this is that manifestation, right? Being violent, having guns, being super aggressive. It's this bullshit hyper masculinity that Trump tries to project and everybody tries to follow. And so that's how I see it as a manifestation of this absurd idea of what it means to be a man.
I think
bully. Yeah.
And a bully. Barbara?
I'm sorry, Nancy.
No.
They have no interest in governing. These people have no serious interest in governing. They're there to stop things. Now, I personally have spent time with Boston Teamsters. And I mean, if Sean O'Brien had actually gotten out of his chair, that little cowboy would have been just a smear.
This isn't like taking on the head of the teachers union, is it? Really?
No, it's not. And I don't like the stereotypes of Teamsters and stuff. I mean, did you see the look on Sean O'Brien's face? He was not fucking around.
No, he wasn't.
That would have been that. And
he didn't take off his glasses. That would have been
right. And you always need to fear the calmest one. Yeah. The one that's more control. That's the person you want to fear.
His eyes just focused. And that was that. And it's not cool. He's a smart man and he is a brilliant negotiator. But it would have been, in another world, it would have been really kind of satisfying to see one of these guys spitting their teeth out on the floor after.
He was almost like Steve. No one's going to challenge Steve. You'll be a fool.
I have to say that I don't blame Trump. I blame like the cable news and particularly Fox, who immediately booked Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, who was the other guy who was the Oklahoma senator who started all of this, on a couple of shows that night. Let him rave about how tough he is. I believe he released a photo of himself like standing there with a gun, with his weaponry and a bunch of ammo in front of him, and this reduction, and and I don't let CNN, MSNBC, or even this show and its wide influential footprint off the hook, because we just turned this into an entertaining moment. I mean, we're laughing about this, right? And that the bug on the screen, the little graphic at the corner of the screen of that clip was something like raw something. I mean, that's like WWE, isn't it?
I've seen some of the interviews with him. In one of the interviews, he says, if I fought, he goes, I would have done anything. He goes, I would have bit. I'll bite anywhere. I don't care where it is. I'll bite anywhere. And
you don't get Queensberry rules in this one, right?
And the interviewer's like, what? You're going to, I mean, that's the wide world of wrestling federation. Right?
By the way, I want to challenge Joel's reference to ultra masculinity. We can't let Boebert or Green off the hook, because they demonstrate the same kind of behavior with the guns and their Christmas cards and the ridiculous
Jewish space lasers.
Yeah. But I gotta say, so also 2 days ago, the headline on MSN, Kevin McCarthy denies punching GOP House Representative Tim Burchett in the kidney.
Elbow.
Elbow.
Right.
It's a nice shot.
Yeah,
and it was the same, and the same day Gates got into it.
Yeah,
with all of them, and I know that I enjoy too much the Republican dysfunction. I know that I just have too much fun. It really does give me life, but it is embarrassing, and this is a bad rep. It's not good for the kids to see this, to see them getting away with this. as much fun as it is.
McCarthy was just doing the tush push. So, you mentioned Teamsters. I have to tell a story. I was talking to somebody about Canada geese, because I live on the east side and there's a lot of geese around here, right? And sometimes they're between you and wherever you want to go. And in the spring, they can be very, very aggressive because they're defending their nests. And somebody told me that there was one at my former newspaper, the Columbus Dispatch printing plant, they had one of those retention ponds and had built a nest. And they said they had to actually close one entrance to the building and direct people to the back because this goose was, and somebody told me, they said, I saw him, a teamster, running at breakneck speed away from this goose who was trying to get him in the ass. He says, I have never seen
had
that
to drop
before.
his cigar and his ring and everything.
You don't mess with their nest. No, don't mess with their nest.
Exactly. So that's the way they go. So all right. So we let's see. Shall we meet on the field of battle? I want to save Jim Harbaugh for closer to the end of the show. But let's jump back into the national scene again, or national with the Michigan focus here. Apparently, Donald Trump is going to appear on the Michigan ballot by judicial order. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Steve and I were of the opinion that this is probably the way this ruling should have gone. Would anyone else like to take this one up?
Well, I want to say that. Well, yeah, I disagree, of course. But of course, I would agree with anything that would keep Trump off the ballot. Any glimmer of hope. So, I mean, if the language, and of course the lawyers are here, but if the language, is clear, and most of them are not, that if you have an involvement in insurrection, which we know he had, I'm just a little confused. I believe that while most, even on both sides, people are fearful of Trump. And I wish someone would really, take it further and look more into this and to see if there's a possible way. I think most people, or some people, especially elected officials, are not going to touch this because it may open up Pandora's box for other things down the road, set of precedents. But I'm just confused that, on the ruling, and I hope it probably goes a little further because I do think it applied to him and his behavior as it relates to January 6th.
Well, I skimmed the ruling. I did not read it with the kind of detail I would read if I was litigating the case. But I think it's the right ruling because the real question here is who gets to make the determination of whether or not he was involved. And there are two possible entities. One's Congress can come to that conclusion and make the decision. They don't have the political will to do that. Apparently, we couldn't get enough votes to even impeach the SOB.
Fear fact, yes.
And the second is we could have a judicial determination. So in the January 6th trial, if it's determined that he in fact did try to rebel and encourage the rebellion, and there's a judicial determination of that, then I think the 14th Amendment would apply. But I think you've got to have one of those two entities make a determination. We still do have, the presumption of innocence. So,
yeah, I could agree with that, even for him, even if it never occurs. But yes, I definitely see your point on that. Judicial. Yes.
I think we all would love to not see him on the ballot, but I think the right thing is leave him on the ballot. As this Michael Crane just said, best solution, defeat him. So I think we don't need more screaming of, he's at a disadvantage in terms of all these cases that he's going up against during the campaign, and then we take him off, and it looks so. It's
more democratic.
Like pile on. Yeah, I see that. It looks like pile on, and then, like I said before, you're getting people, even people who are against him, will get sympathetic to him because they would think, everything on the political side is trying to just stop him, destroy him. Right. So I agree.
It's been really difficult as a layperson, and I hear this from people, to watch the wheels of justice moving so slowly. It's slow.
We do have a quick little thing on Trump.
them you were going to go up to the Capitol? Were you just?
I was going to, and then Secret Service said you can't. And then by the time I would have, and then when I got back, I wanted to go back. I was thinking about going back during the problem to stop the problem, doing it myself. Secret Service didn't like that idea too much.
The problem. He's referring to the riot, right? Yeah. Okay. The problem. Yeah.
Missing that he's the problem. Huh?
Yeah.
Right.
But what I was saying though is that if this, just real fast, if this is correctly, takes a long time. If this isn't done correctly, then it can blow back, and then he walks free, and then it's awful. And it's got to go slowly, and it has to go by the book. Frustrating because we all know where he belongs, but we have to trust you guys to do this right, and it takes a while.
Steve?
I think that every time when Allan plays something that this guy says, or anytime I hear anything he says, he's such a complete lying sack of shit. The guy would have never ever gone around there. He never ever puts himself in any play. All that talk about being tough, he's a weenie. I've said this to you guys for I don't know how long. If we were on Washburn and Curtis outside Mumford and a fight broke out, the last guy I'd count on to come help me would be that son of a bitch. It would never be him. He'd be running down Wyoming headed to 7 Mile. I'm telling you guys. I don't know why everybody goes along with this crap about him being a tough guy. He just talks tough. If he had to come to Mumford or Northeastern High School and deal with the guys we dealt with, his butt would have never said one word about anything. I guarantee.
And I fully endorse the idea that Steve Fishman who's roughly the same age, you're a little bit younger than him, would have made Donald Trump his bitch at Mumford High School.
I love it.
So there. Running down 7 miles. All right. Well, I don't want to let a show pass when we have people with specific expertise on some of our topics to get their opinions on some of this stuff. So I want to boot it to Barb and tell us, can you kind of walk us through the UAW contracts close call at GM? I was, at the time that this agreement was reached and the details were released, it sounded like this huge win for the union. And then we start to see these various plants that are voting it down. I mean, can you kind of tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Well, as far as I know, they did pass, and
they did pass, but it was
a squeaker.
It was
yes, definitely a squeaker. The thing about this strike that really struck me from the beginning and to the end is that these people went out for other people. They went out for the tier system.
Right.
They went out for the people that work next to them that are doing the exact same job, and for the same amount of time they're making half the money, which I thought was just the most wonderful expression of solidarity. And one of the things that was holding this contract up was that it did leave out the retirees, which was part of the original thing. And as a UAW retiree wife, I was really kind of like hoping to get a bump. But on the other hand, I would have voted for the contract. It's a good contract. I appreciate it. I want to thank every one of those hands that voted no on it. That's a good thought, but let's move forward. And that was really the biggest thing. And I don't think that anybody should vote for a contract they don't want. And I believe so strongly in that kind of union democracy. If you don't like the contract, you vote it down. And I'm glad. I think to go back out would have been, I think Sean Fain would have just taken, at that point, all of GM was going down.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good when you have a big block of votes saying no, sends a message so the company doesn't say, whoa, this was unanimous. Maybe we could have given a little less. We could have, and I think it's a good message for people to push back a little there. So.
Right. We had a fundraiser 2 weeks ago at a little UAW hall, and we raised almost $9,000 in one night. I'm really proud of that.
Nice.
But you could still send me money. But talking to people, people were coming in their shifts. This thing ran all day so we had lunch for people and they came in, and then we had people on the afternoon shift that came in. This went from like 9:30 in the morning till 11. I left at 11 because the bar was still open at that point. But but talking to people about it, and it was, you know, they were taking it seriously, because it's hard to be on strike. But if you're going to go ahead and do that, you're going to do it for real. And when they took them out in 2019, a lot of those guys were really willing to stay out, but they had different UAW leadership back then. And now, you know, so I'm relieved. Let's get Blue Cross Blue Shield now. Let's get those guys a contract, and let's get the
casino workers.
Yeah, the casino workers. I think there was just a newsflash saying that they may have reached a tentative agreement.
Oh, cool.
I really hope that they are successful. And if I could just say on the overall, you know, Nancy, in my opinion, I said it before, I think that overall and the structure, because UAW over the years, some people have been saying, okay, they're losing their strength and the power, just labor overall. I think this whole strike really reinforced and brought it back. And let you know that the union in labor is strong and still here and even getting stronger. The new president, I think a lot of people didn't know him before, but you definitely know him now. And I think after a while, even some of the supporters, you know, we were getting a little leery and thinking like maybe he's not going to be successful. You know, all the rhetoric, we wanted him to tone down some of the rhetoric and just, you know, stay at the table. But I would say I am happy, because you look at what they got now, opposed to what was first proposed. Come on, Big Three. You know, I think, you know, you really pull the curtains back, because really what they end up getting, what you first offered, it wasn't fair. In addition, I think they empowered a lot of other employees throughout the country in other industries to stand up for themselves. You know, because you have at the top, you know, you got to spread the wealth. It's not about the me, it's about the we.
And look what it did. Look what effect it had at non-union automakers, like the Japanese. I mean, this is, you know, we've had falling birth rates in this country for decades now, and it's coming out in, you know, the schools are closing because there are fewer children going to them. But but the biggest thing is this labor shortage, which the pandemic really exacerbated, and so now people are saying, you know, I'm not coming back for whatever crap you're paying, and you better, if you want to, you know, at the same time that the CEO has 9 houses, I don't think it's ridiculous for us to ask for a little bit more. So I think it is.
But I think that I think one of the really interesting issues is this balance, and I'm interested in hearing everybody's view on this. One of the impacts of this could be an increase in cost, the inflationary effect, et cetera, or my hope is this is the beginning of the end of trickle-down economics. What we should be able to do, and it shouldn't be all that difficult, that the auto industry should not have to seriously increase prices. What they have to do is narrow that gap between what they're paying for their executives and what they're paying for their employees. I mean, some of these numbers are just ridiculous.
You know what?
Go ahead, Allan.
I was talking to a good friend of mine who I grew up in. He was in labor industrial relations for many decades, 40 years or something at GM, was on the bargaining committee and stuff. And he said this a few weeks ago before there was a settlement. He says, you watch what we did every time we gave away more in the contract is we figured out how to cut costs, and we laid off. And you see it in Stellantis now, they're doing buyouts with white collar workers. He says, whenever there's a good contract, the companies figure out ways how to cut people. And that's what we'll probably see, so that it balances out for them.
Well, we'll see though. I mean, in a labor shortage, you can't necessarily cut all your people. You know, you can do some.
But the white collar, I think
we need to organize those guys.
Yeah.
We really need to organize those guys. And I have to say, you're not going to get anything by saying please. You're not going to get it.
Yeah.
Because they don't care. Mary Bear is going to grab one of her fur coats and go stomping off, or one of these guys are going to get into their triple yacht and they're going to go and fuck them. I mean, and they don't have to raise car prices a penny.
That's, you know, it's interesting that the optics there. When I was at the Washington Post, Don Graham got $400,000. That was his salary as publisher, CEO of the whole Washington Post company. He understood the optics. I mean, he could have gotten his, and then his niece came in. She got, I don't know what her salary was, but she got a $1.5 million bonus at a time where they were pushing for no raises. And it's like she didn't get the optics, where Don Graham was always very sharp about that. So, and Mary Barra, the optics, once it's the optics is no return for her when she's making $29 million in salary and benefits. How do you tell workers, sorry, you can't
afford it
from $15 to $17 an hour?
What are you trying to destroy our company?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, in the spirit of working on or playing to our panel's strengths, the Supreme Court of the United States allegedly adopted a code of conduct this week. What can our lawyers say about this thing? Because I was reading about it. It doesn't sound like it's much of a code.
Another SNL skit.
Mechanism.
Excuse me? Go ahead, Joel. What?
I don't believe there's an enforcement mechanism, so it's teethless. It means nothing. It's a piece of paper that says don't do something.
Right.
I mean, it's just an absurdity.
Has anybody read it?
How does it mean? If you throw a penalty, if you throw a flag on the field, you get a 5-yard penalty. These guys do something, they steal money. You should do that, but there's nothing they can do. That's bullshit.
Has anybody read it? I looked at it, and let me tell you what's not there. If you talk to guys like Ken Mogill, the guys in our business who specialize in ethics, they'll always say, well, this says you shall not, or this says you shall. Those words do not appear in this document. The word shall does not appear in the document, and the phrase shall not do not appear in the document. It's may, should, recommended.
How you feel
and Joel's absolute. Also no enforcement mechanism.
Right.
But
and look,
you're telling me Ginny Thomas has nothing to worry about, that she can get back into her free RV and go for another and go camping in another Walmart parking lot. Okay.
And we've only gotten to this point when it's not far enough, only because ProPublica did an amazing job of exposing a lot of this stuff. They were shamed into doing it. It wasn't like, yes, we should probably have something. They were shamed to a degree that they had to do something, and it sounds like not a lot that they're doing.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the past it wasn't necessary. In the past, if a justice acted, Abe Fortas acted inappropriately, even when it wasn't really dramatically bad, the other justices would go and say, hey, you can't do this. You're making us look bad. But who do we appoint now? We're appointing to the bench political hacks.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you got to look at who's appointing them. Who appointed the last,
Yeah.
That answers your question there.
Can I just go off on a very brief tangent here and say I read something the other day in a serious publication that said Donald Trump was adopting a moderate position on abortion, and idiots apparently were starting to believe that he actually has a moderate position on abortion. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm nailing those 3 justices to the walls of his cathedral if I could just mix all the metaphors. There's no fucking way he gets away with that as far as I'm concerned. So, all right. If this were a real a show with a more sophisticated support staff, I would tell Allan to cue the Victor's March here. But it's time for us to talk about the Harbaugh decision, the decision to uphold the 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh for the sign stealing scandal. And I'm putting that in air quotes because I'm sorry. Every time I read, this is the advantage of being pretty much sports agnostic. I had to. My husband and I are like 2 toddlers. What are they really talking about? So he's Googling this stuff, and I'm like, wait. So a guy holds up a sign with like a picture of Barack Obama and an orange, and and an X, and that tells them what play to call. And you're not allowed to notice this? No, you're not allowed to travel to notice it. And it's just so insane. But now apparently Harbaugh has accepted his punishment. He's going to be out through the end of the season, the Ohio State game. Come on, Michigan people. Tell us what you think of all of this.
Steve, I think Fishman was prescient when he said a few weeks ago that Harbaugh is going to go to the NFL. I think this is what the stage is. I think Harbaugh is going to. I think, Steve, you're right. He's going to take that off from the NFL. He'll serve his 3 games. So you don't think so? He'll play in the national championship if he gets there. He'll coach it, and then he'll be gone.
So
you know more than I do. Tell me, you got the inside word.
It's not a matter of having the inside word. The funny thing is, I had been saying from the beginning of the year, I thought that he would be gone, having nothing to do with any of this before anybody knew anything about this. I honestly kind of thought the opposite when I saw how Ward really stuck up for him last week. What do I think happened here? I think that a decision was made, and I don't know if Jim went along with it or not, that they had enough of this stuff being out there in public. If there had been a hearing this morning, because it's in state court, the newspapers would have been there, the TV cameras would have been there, and I don't know what it is they would have said. They literally just fired the linebackers coach, Chris Partridge, and some of the allegations were that he was somebody who knew because he was closer to this kid Stallions. The long and the short of it is that for me, and I think anybody that ever played sports, particularly any football guys, everybody's been trying to steal signs since time immemorial. They steal them in baseball, they steal them in football. If we could steal them off the basketball court, we stole them then too. At the end of the day, though, the guy who's going to suffer the most from this is not going to be Jim Harbaugh. It's not going to be Chris Partridge, who got canned as the linebackers coach. The guy who's got more pressure than anybody ever right now is a big asshole by the name of Ryan Day. Because if they come to Ann Arbor and they lose without the coach coaching, if you think the shit he took last year for us beating the hell out of him in Columbus, wait till you see what happens on this November the 25th. And I left Wojo a message when I read his column this morning, castigating Michigan and Harbaugh and this and that. I said he needs to write a column about the pressure that this asshole is going to be under next Saturday. Because I am telling you, Ohio State fans are crazy to begin with, but if they lose when the coach is in a hotel room or he's at home or wherever he is, this guy's going to take more shit than you can imagine.
Why don't they just right?
But Nancy, I have to say, for the Spartan that I am, Spartan on the panel, and I don't know much about the signs and all the sign stealing, even though I know that coach, it looked kind of weird at the CMU game and he's standing there with dark sunglasses and all this stuff. I don't know what that was about. That's kind of sketchy. But I'm glad it took a little focus off of MSU. Because
go
we
green, Beverly, go green.
Horrible season. So we're just happy that I don't care if it's sign stealing, hell, you're stealing flowers, you're stealing whatever that U of M is doing. It's a distraction for us and give us a little come up for air a little bit.
So there's just one other thing, so you all know this, and this I know beyond all doubt, not beyond a reasonable doubt. Every single program, probably everywhere, but certainly in the Big Ten, everyone has, and this kid's not a coach, he's just a staffer. Everybody has a staffer whose sole job is to try to steal signs. Mm-hmm. The issue here is not stealing of signs. The issue is this ridiculous thing from 30 years ago about you can't travel and steal signs. But I am telling you, as sure as we're sitting here, every single program has somebody whose number one job is to steal signs if possible. And I can tell you something else. Last year, this guy Schiano, the coach at Rutgers, it was, oh my God, this is so awful. They were stealing Michigan signs, and at halftime, they had to change them because they knew they were stealing the signs. And Rutgers played them a lot closer last year than they did this year. So,
well, Steve, I can also argue and say I agree with you that maybe every coaching staff or everybody who goes to a college or whatever, at some point in their life, they probably had phone sex. So I agree with you, what you're saying.
Yes, I
can go both ways. What's the big deal? What's the big deal? Phone sex. What's the big deal?
All right. I have to say, when I host the show, I try to gradually lighten the mood as we move on toward the final segment. But we have a rare audience request here from one of our a commenter that Allan just posted. He says, "Are we going to talk about Trump's political revenge hit list if he is reelected?" And I think that's pretty somber, but I think I got to say, this was my feeling in 2020. It was like he's saying we say the quiet part out loud. We have he's saying the quiet part out loud. He's saying, I'm going to rule like an autocrat. I'm going to be, what's his face? Viktor Orban. I'm going to be Erdogan. I'm going to
camps, he said.
Exactly. He's talking about putting, asylum seekers in literal concentration camps. I mean, how does this guy have one person other than Stephen Miller standing at his side, let alone, millions.
I don't know if you saw that he has tried to sue Jimmy Kimmel. They sent a threatening letter because Jimmy Kimmel went on the air and said, and just said from what the Hollywood Reporter reported, that his Truth Social lost $73 million. And apparently they claim it was only $31 million. I have actually a little.
Here's the thing. This is a nightly comedy show. We do make every effort to present accurate information. We're pretty rigorous when it comes to fact checking. And in this case, on the day we aired this, it had been widely reported by multiple credible outlets that Truth Social had lost $73 million. But according to their filing with the SEC, Truth Social lost $31.6 million since its launch in June 30th, 2023. The company lost $31.6 million. In other words, in fairness, Truth Social isn't a colossal failure. It's only an abysmal failure. And I would like to do the right thing and congratulate our balloon animal former president and his company on only losing $31.6 million. For you, that's pretty good. That's one of your best performances yet.
One of the things that is so frustrating right now as a person of the left, and I'm not a Democrat, right? I passed being a Democrat a very long time ago, but I'm seeing people on the socials and in person saying things like Genocide Joe, because he won't call for a ceasefire. I don't think that people have any fucking reality as to what is going to happen to them. What's going to happen to the left if this guy gets back in? And I see these people, these Muslim leaders in Dearborn
holding the
signs.
signs.
Like, do you really think he's going to support you? Or are you?
They're holding the signs to say "Abandon Biden," and it's like, if you don't like Joe Biden, wait until you meet Trump 2.0, because it's
Muslim ban.
it's going to be.
Everything that's bad, every woman, every person of color, every person of different religious backgrounds. I don't like the fact that Joe Biden hasn't stood up and said,
right.
But I haven't lost my fucking mind.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree.
I mean, do they forget the rhetoric that Trump says? Trump wants to build that wall. Trump has a good marketing slogan with the red hat: "Make America Great Again." What do you think that means? That doesn't include you. It doesn't include minorities.
Yeah, it's the again. It's the again part.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
I love the hat. There's a hat out there that says, it's a red hat. It says, "Make brisket $1.49 a pound again."
I've seen the one that says "Make Metallica Great Again." I've also seen "Make Hockey Violent Again." It's like make noun verb, or make noun adjective again. It's like
Calvin pissing on something. You used to see those stickers on all the cars. Calvin pissing on.
But to your point, I hope that they do not. Yes.
But it's terrifying. People have
they've lost their minds.
Lost their minds.
Okay. All right, Alan, we're getting to that point. So let's,
all right, let me play a commercial and then we'll do our usual.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your garden supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com and see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
We are here to help.
All right, we are here to help. Here we go.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Never gets old.
Never gets old. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'll give one. This is an easy one. Mine is Carissa Thompson. She is a reporter, I believe, for Fox Sports, sideline reporter. You don't know who she is.
Yes.
But what she did is part of her job is to talk to coaches between halftime. You know, what are you going to do? How you feeling?
Sideline reporter.
Yeah, the sideline reporter, and most sideline reporters are women. You know, it's a nice thing to say. But apparently she was making up quotes. So she wasn't talking to coaches, and she would feel irritated. You know, she'd just make things up. So she admitted that on a podcast, and now every female journalist, especially, saying, "Hey, we busted our asses to get here. We're credible. We're serious journalists. You got to go." Mm-hmm. And I think she's the schmuck of the week. I think that was a big error. It's like when Mitch Albom did his thing about pretending that he was at places. You can't.
This is worse.
This is worse.
Yeah, this is journalism schmuck of the week. And you're right to point out that it's women who are because women had to fight their way into sports journalism,
right.
And for that to happen, it's just
still fighting.
Yeah, and are still fighting.
Yeah, they do a great job, you know. But this was beyond the pale. So.
There you go. Okay, Barb.
I mean, I could pick George Santos. I could pick the Republican Party.
Comedy alone.
Don't let him go.
Keep him. Stealing my thunder.
But I have to say this week, and I'm glad you said those two words. Mitch Albom wrote a book called The Little Liar. And then I had one of those moments where I stared at it. Somebody sent me a visual of the cover, and I stared at it, and I wanted to punch the screen, and I wanted to laugh. And it's not called The Autobiography of Mitch Albom, by the way. It's just
it's a heartwarming Holocaust novel.
It's a Holocaust novel because written in the style
Makes
of a
me
Holocaust.
feel warm.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me long for the Auschwitz again.
Oh, those are the good days.
I was at work. I was a graphic designer at the paper, and I was there that he made up the story, and we had to the old-fashioned way. We had to stop the presses, and we had to rebuild the front page of the paper, and then we had to rebuild the front page of the sports section, and then we had to move everything around in there. And I mean, I got a couple hours overtime out of it, but
which is the last good thing Mitch Albom did for you.
Which normally I turn down overtime just on general principle, just because I hated him so much, but. I hung in there that night, and it was just, and he got, and his Carolee Hutton's husband worked in my department, the publisher of the Free Press, and he just walked around giggling because he knew what was going to happen to Mitch. Nothing was going to happen to Mitch. So because he remains the little liar, and I don't like to make side jokes about people, but my schmuck of the week and of every week for the rest of his life is Mitch Albom.
Okay, all right.
All right.
I like the theme.
Bill, what about you?
Not to go back to something that we've already covered, but my schmuck of the week has got to be Markwayne Mullin. In a Congress that has Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Bobbitt, to make them look more reasonable, this guy jumps up and wants to fight. I'm only more frustrated by the people who had voted him in, and maybe they ought to be our schmucks of the week. And my understanding is that he's actually taken an uptick in the polls.
Of course.
Go
it's
figure.
Tennessee. I mean, it's Tennessee. Don't try to figure it out. It's
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Steve, you got your finger up.
Yeah, I better go next because I intended to make Markwayne Mullin my schmuck of the week, but that was too easy. And my schmucks of the week, Bill just referred to them, are his constituents. That's my schmucks of the week. Why? For the reasons that are obvious, he's had an uptick in the polls. But more importantly, Markwayne Mullin himself said in one of those Fox News interviews that his constituents would have been upset had he not threatened to fight that labor leader right there in the halls of Congress. And that tells me all I need to know about the citizens of Oklahoma. So you, the citizens of Oklahoma, which doesn't include Billy Sims because he doesn't live down there anymore, you guys are my schmucks of the week.
Add to that, Steve, the fact that they censored a member of the House for speaking out on political issues last week.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What's the Senate doing about this clown?
Exactly.
And you're right. I corrected. It's not Tennessee. It's Oklahoma. So
Yes.
okay. Beverly.
Well, I still have to stick with my George. I mean, George, I was going to give him a break this week until the ethics report came out. And oh my God, Botox?
Yeah.
All of these wonderful things, casinos and just massages. And of course, he didn't do it.
OnlyFans.
That's going to be another SNL skit this week. I mean, that guy. And then he comes out and says, oh, I'm not going to run for re-election. No crap. Really?
No shit. Here, we actually have a video. Let me play this real quick.
Say that Santos blatantly stole from his campaign, spending campaign funds, according to this report, which we are just going through now, on things like Botox, lavish trips to Atlantic City, on OnlyFans, on designer goods. I mean, really everything under the sun.
I gotta say, that's the first time I've ever heard a trip to Atlantic City described as lavish. Drunk, terrifying, or grounds for divorce, but never lavish. Still, it's quite a list. Botox, Atlantic City, OnlyFans, and designer goods. Is he a congressman or a lesser Kardashian?
And that is my schmuck of the week.
He's absolutely right about Atlantic City. I've only been there once, but still. So, all right, Allan.
I was going to go along, but I'm going to say the GOP for tolerating George Santos this whole time. Kevin McCarthy, who needed his vote. I mean, that guy should have been kicked out the first week of Congress. And the fact that he is possibly, now they're saying maybe he'll get kicked out by the end of the year, but the fact that he's been there all this time is so shameful. And I put that on the GOP. They do not, there's no ethics there. I mean, it's just total bullshit. Total bullshit.
All right. Well, that leaves me. I've got a double today. I know we're running a little over, but I just want to go get two in here. First of all, because one relates to last week's Schmuck of the Week, which was Joe Moss, the Ottawa County Commissioner, who led his way to this disaster of trying to fire the public health director, and is going to end up paying, as of last week, was going to end up paying her $4 million to go away, essentially, which is, going to almost certainly be a cause for a recall campaign in Ottawa County if the people in Ottawa County are not like Oklahomans and have brains left in their head. But now this week, they're trying to welsh on this. They're already trying to walk it back and say, oh, no, we didn't mean $4 million. We meant another much smaller fee amount.
$4.
$4, yeah, whatever. So that's schmuck number one. But the other one, and I've got to go local again, is Peter Meyer, who walked into a trap that was set for him, and it had signs saying, don't put your foot here, don't put your foot here, it's a big trap, it's gonna cut off your leg. And he walked right into it last week on Off the Record, which is the Lansing chat show at the end of the week. And the host, Tim Skubik, asked him 3 times directly if he would support a rape and incest exception in an abortion law, and he refused to answer, thereby pissing off Republicans who wanted him to say no, and Democrats who wanted him to say yes. And I think it's fair to say that he is toast. And that may be the shortest auger in next to George Santos, outside of George Santos in Michigan congressional history. So let's leave it at that. All right. It's been a minute. It's been an hour and 8 of them, actually. And I think it's time for us to say goodbye. So thanks to Steve Fishman, Joel Sklar, Bill Seikaly, the Troika of lawyers, Barb Ingalls, Beverly Watts, Allan Lengel. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday next week. And Lengel?
Drive home safely.
Okay, then.